Good morning, Bob. How are you?
I'm excellent, Dan. How are you this morning?
Doing very well. And as you and I know, in this very interesting world of media, things get out there. So on realignment and reclassification, setting the record straight this morning on what is actually going on at LeMoyne College, you have not made an official decision. Correct.
No, that's correct, Dan. And as you've chronicled our process, our journey, every step of the way with great accuracy, you are 100% accurate once again. We have not made a decision on reclassification. In fact, if folks have tuned in and watched our series, that we've kind of outlined exactly where we are right now in the process. We talked about a document that was going to be released, and that document was released yesterday to the public, to our community, and really an opportunity for us to provide an update to our community and also to try to solicit some more feedback. As you know, we've been extremely transparent, very inclusive in the process. We've held 5 open fora. We held 2 open forums with our student athletes, 2 with the parents of student athletes. This is yet another opportunity to gain additional feedback, to hear more voices, because at some point our committee work is going to be done, and we're very nearing that point right now. And we want to have one last opportunity to listen to any voices out there before our committee takes a vote and makes a recommendation to the president. But that at that point, there's still some very important steps that would need to take place, as we've talked about. It, if our committee recommends to the college that we feel reclassification to Division One is in our best interest, then the president would have to agree with that, and she's on our committee as well. So you'd have to feel that she would be on board with whatever direction the committee decides to take that vote. And then it would have to go before the Board of Trustees. And the Board of Trustees is our ultimate steering authority of this institution. They will vote on this. They will discern this themselves, talk about it, discuss it. And ultimately, they'll make the vote and they'll have the final decision in this process. And so we're weeks away from that, maybe even months away from that happening. It all depends, on certain timelines. But in terms of our committee work is nearing a completion. And I would think that within the next 3 weeks or so, our committee work will be complete.
And in going through this process and releasing this, this document to the public, did you anticipate that there would be such a degree of misinformation because of speaking on the MAC and speaking on the NEC and speaking on what it would cost and whatnot, to lay out what it would look like if you did go Division One, with "if" being the key word? Did you feel like this would be a road that you may have to cross putting this out publicly?
Well, we considered many different scenarios, Dan, and certainly that was one we talked about: media attention, and if people would jump to conclusions. So, yes, we had considered that as a possibility, but there was really nothing we could do to combat that, other than the work that we're doing over the last 24 hours now and trying to set the record straight whenever we can. This is a process. It's been a long journey. We've tried to be exceedingly inclusive and transparent, probably more so than any school that I know of that has gone through this process. But that's the Jesuit way. That's who we are. That's our community. We're a community-based institution, and we wanted to make sure that our stakeholders and our constituents and fans all have an understanding of why we're considering this and what's driving the thoughts. And in so doing, when you're that transparent, obviously it could tend to be a negative, because you open yourselves up to misinformation sometimes, and maybe reckless reporting, if you will, things of that nature. And I think that's what we saw yesterday. I think our document clearly stated and outlined the process to anyone who took the time to read it. It stated that this is just another step in the process, and it outlined the steps that I just talked about. So in no way, if anyone were to read that document from start to finish, would you be able to walk away from that and say that LeMoyne had decided to transition to Division One. That's erroneous, and quite honestly was reckless in my opinion.
Here with Bob Beretta this morning on a special AD and DT speaking on realignment and reclassification. Bob, with what is true and what is actually in this document that was not reckless reporting, to look at some of the pieces here in the breakdown of it itself, looking at the introduction, you had put in bold very clearly on the first page. Please note that the college would be eligible to reclassify only after receiving an invitation from a Division I conference. At the time of this writing, we have not received an invitation. I would think that would have clearly put the put the kibosh on really anything. But like you said, people have to read the document and not jump to conclusions.
And we've been, again, so transparent in this process. We could have left the names of conferences out, but I think anyone that has a knowledge of college athletics could connect the dots very easily and say, well, these are the conferences that would make the most sense. So we felt like, again, in who we are, we're to a fault. We're honest and open and transparent. And so we want to put that information out there and not hide behind any false barriers or anything that would obstruct the truth being put forth. And as you mentioned, a school can announce its intent to reclassify to Division I, but they can't reclassify without an invitation to a Division I conference. That legislation was passed several years ago. And to this point in time, as we speak here at 9:15 on Thursday, the 29th of September, we have not received an invitation to join a conference. And I don't anticipate one is coming today or tomorrow either, for that matter. But our goal in this from the start, and you and I talked about this way back in the winter, I won't even say the spring, but in the winter when we started covering this on your series, we want to put LeMoyne in the best position to capitalize on an opportunity that may or may not come. We want to have the agency to say yes or no. We don't want to be caught unprepared. That's my job as an athletic director. That's Dr. Lemura's job as the president of this institution. And as she stated in several open forum that we've held, she would not be doing her job properly if she didn't investigate and explore this. And we're doing it the best way that we can with due diligence over a long period of time. Our committee's met now 26. We've held 26 meeting sessions of our ad hoc committee on athletics reclassification. And we're just putting the college in the best position to either capitalize on an opportunity or to say that, you know what, we explored it and it just didn't make sense right now. I think when you look at that document, we bring up positives and negatives, but there is a lean within the committee and within that document to say that, hey, this is something exciting. We feel like there are many exciting elements to this potential scenario, and we want to hear more feedback, but this is why we're excited about the process and what could be lying ahead for LeMoyne.
To the people that haven't read the document or have only read pieces of it, what are those exciting opportunities for LeMoyne? What are those pillars that you think could really turn into a special foundation of the future? What is it about Division I that right now for LeMoyne is enticing?
Great question, Dan. And it's not so much about what isn't enticing now. I think it's more about growth and how we position LeMoyne College for success over the next 2 and 3 decades. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at this as potentially a growth strategy for the institution, not just athletics. Athletics would be the vehicle for which we use this great opportunity for growth. I think it's very compelling for us to think about having the opportunity to spotlight our institution on the largest stage in college athletics, which would be the Division I level. I think the potential of a geographic footprint, being able to expand where our teams play in some very desirable regions of the state and the country, that's exciting to us. I think we all understand that we need to grow our footprint, and the opportunity to add exposure and shine that spotlight on the school and talk about all the great things that are happening here academically and how we play such a large role in our community. All those things are really appealing to us. If you read the document, it outlines certain elements that we studied over the past several months as a committee, everything from academics to financial impact, student experience, student athlete experience, how this would affect our nation mission, the climate on on campus, how our student athletes interact in the community, engagement, visibility of the institution. These are all things that are highlighted in the document, in the report. And quite candidly, the majority of the feedback on each one of those elements, we find very exciting opportunities that could lie at the Division I level for the institution, not just for our student athletes. And when you talk about the student athlete experience, I do feel like our student athletes want to be challenged at the highest level. You know, we're a Jesuit institution. One of our values is magis, and we have this restlessness with the status quo, and we do feel that we need to position ourselves for growth. And I think that this would be a fantastic opportunity for growth, to set the college up for a great future, some exciting times ahead. And I think our student athletes want to be challenged at the highest level. And while I've stated this several times, there's not a great difference between the talent levels at Division II and Division I. Division I still is widely accepted as the highest level of competition at the collegiate level. And I think our student athletes would embrace that challenge.
Speaking here with Bob Beretta, the Athletics Director of LeMoyne College, in this very special AD and DT, setting the record straight on LeMoyne's current place in realignment and reclassification. Bob, you said a lot of different things, all different pieces of this process and what's been given very clearly and precisely in this document. One of the things I wanted to get into was the discernment process, like you said, of 25 plus meetings and having different members responsible for different things. The collegiate consultants with a benchmark study that reviewed LeMoyne's current athletic configuration and various options for reclassification, and then looking at Joe Grasso and Vice President for Finance, Tim Lee, Vice President for Enrollment Management, Bill Brower, Vice President for Advancement, and all of these different things that you had to do. The ad hoc committee consulting with Stonehill and Merrimack, who came from the NE10 and spoke with them on their move and what that's done, what President Dr. Linda Lemura have done. Just what you could say about in this discernment process and all of these meetings and different things that have happened as you've gathered this information together. There are so many people focusing on specific areas to really break this down that, you know, you talk about discernment, and there's decision making and there's discernment. Discernment to me is a deeper decision making, a lasagna, so to speak, of decision making, where there are so many layers to this. To have different people working on different things, coming together and sitting together and showing their findings, just what all of this process has done for LeMoyne College, whether you stay in Division II or move to Division I, the due diligence that you've all taken to really understand every element of this and to not leave any stone unturned.
Dan, I've been so impressed with the dedication and the diligence of the work of this committee and the individuals on this committee. It's a very complex topic, as we touched on some of the issues that we've had to consider. And we brought subject matter experts in each of those. We brought in Tim Lee as the VP of Enrollment Management, as you stated earlier, Joe Grasso, our CFO. We brought our chief economist on campus, Wayne Grove, one of our highly esteemed faculty members, who's really looked at this from an economical standpoint and where's the ROI? Does it make sense? And how we explain this and discuss it in a community setting. So we have been painstakingly aware of the fact that this is a very complex situation, and we wanted to involve as many voices as possible, experts in each one of these areas. Dr. Margie Ernlin, who's one of our top sports marketing professors here on campus, she's been involved. Martha Grabowski and Kathy Forbush, a member of the faculty and a member of the trustee, respectively. We've done a literature review to see what other work has been out there to see how it affects college campuses, those institutions that have recently reclassified. So I appreciate the fact that you've dived into that document and appreciate from where you sit the due diligence that's taken place. This hasn't been a haphazard one meeting and discuss it and let's go. It's not that at all. We have wanted, and I think we've taken great pains to make sure that we listen to subject matter experts on both sides of the topic. I have been so impressed that these folks in our ecosystem, the highest people at the institution in terms of leadership, from the president to the provost to some of our top faculty members, our current board of trustees chair, our recent past board of trustees chair, several members of the trustees and faculty. We've all gathered 26 times, and I can tell you that there have been very rare instances where someone has missed a committee meeting. It hasn't been, well, the president's on the committee and she's been the three of them. No, President Lemira has been to every one of those sessions. Maybe she missed one if she was out of time. I can tell you there's times where she's had conflicts and she's broken out of a conflict meeting off campus and joined us via Zoom on her phone. So it's been that level of commitment and dedication. And I think we've been very careful to not put the cart before the horse and make a decision without a discernment. And I think that's what was disappointing most about the report yesterday, Dan, is it painted us in a really poor position. And I think an unfair position that we've made this decision, because then this process would be a farce, and it's anything but a farce. We have been so dedicated to the process of not making it. Our committee hasn't voted. We haven't voted because we are waiting to listen to all the voices. Now, when you go through 26 meetings, certainly opinions begin to become formed. And I believe that there are many members, myself included, that have a formed opinion right now. But it doesn't mean that opinion can't change based on feedback. And that's what was disappointing yesterday, and that it made it look like that the process that we're going was anything less than credible. And I believe it is a very credible process. And we could ultimately, as a committee, recommend reclassification, but we're not there right now. We're not there yet. And we might be there within a couple of weeks after this community discussion period ceases. But again, I think that is irresponsible to report that we've already reached that conclusion, because we have not.
Coming from LeMoyne Athletics Director Bob Beretta this morning, live and exclusive on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and setting the record straight this morning. Bob, one of the things that I would love to dive into from the document, the financial implications. You and I spoke about it a bit through this process, but to really look at what you would have to do. And then I know that there's a piece of this where the conferences that you thought would align with LeMoyne if you did receive an invitation, and if you did ultimately decide that you would like to reclassify to Division I, that you're comparable to the NEC as well as the MAC, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, and the NEC being the Northeast Conference, to look at the financial implications of what LeMoyne would have to endure to make a move like this, and then to also speak to where you feel you line up with Division I conferences like the NEC and the MAC, because you really broke down the numbers, and in a lot of cases, not only are you head and shoulders above the NE10 as far as different pieces of that financial side of things, but you are also in other places with the MAC and the NEC above some of the things that would be asked of you there, which again shows the due diligence of doing your homework and research as a committee and seeing that financially this is what it would cost us, but financially this is what we look like.
Absolutely, Dan. We have a plan. And again, I think the fact that we're even in position to consider such a move is a great tribute to the leadership of this institution, of President Lemira, the members of our cabinet, our leadership. And over the years, we've practiced great fiscal responsibility. And I think the fact that we're even in position to discuss this type of move is a tribute to that. And it shows the resiliency of the institution coming out of COVID and where we stand, the stability where we are financially. Higher education is a tough business right now. It's a very competitive place. And, you look at some first year admittance numbers across the country, and particularly in the Northeast, and there are schools that miss their first year average or goal by multiple hundreds of students. We're at a place here at LeMoyne where we reached our goal. We exceeded our goal. And instead of thinking about how do we just kind of maintain those numbers, President Lemira has charged us with a march to 700. So instead of bringing in a class of 630, we're looking to try to bring in a class of 700. And a reclassification to Division I could play a large role in that strategic growth. We're talking about potentially adding numbers to our rosters. We can't do that in a lot of cases right now because our athletic facility limits our team locker room space, quite honestly. We have one team in particular that would like, this is an example, we have several like this, but I'll give you one example, would like to carry 28 individuals on the roster, but we only have locker room space for 20 for that team. So they can't carry 28. So we're looking at some infrastructural enhancements, some facility enhancements that would help us grow. And again, if you look to grow rosters in that space, those student athletes, many of them will be paying a portion of their net tuition to come to LeMoyne. They won't all be on full ride scholarships. Very few student athletes here are. So when you bring in student athletes, that helps the composition of your first year class. It helps the fiscal numbers of the institution. So roster growth is a part of this. We feel like potentially a Division I classification could really spike interest in our program and in our institution and help us grow those roster numbers. Another big part of this is we shifted club sports and recreation under athletics this summer, and that's under our purview now. And one of the things we're looking to do is energize that program on campus. We've added 4 club sports already for this year. Now we'll have to gauge interest level, and it's new, and we'll see. But over the next X amount of time, we've committed to adding these 4 sports in as quickly as potentially this year or next year. I think in the future you're going to see that area invigorated. We've floated some ideas and some thoughts of how we could really expand on that program, and we think that will interest students in LeMoyne that are interested in playing athletics at a high level, but maybe not at a Division I or Division II level. You and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on one of our previous sessions of AD&T and DT. And it's all part of this larger growth strategy. And certainly, if we were to increase our first year admittance, that would help offset some of the costs that we're talking about that would be required in a reclassification to Division I. The document states that we estimate that the net cost annually could be a minimum of, or I should say a maximum in the $2.2 to $2.3 million range. A lot of that number is in scholarships that we were saying that, hey, if we reclassify, we need to increase our investment level in athletic scholarships. So a great number, a great majority of that 2.2, 2.3 numbers is in scholarships. Yeah. It's not we're spending more money on things or trips. Certainly, we know that we're going to need to increase our staff. Certainly, we know that we're going to need to increase our coaching staff and our administrative staff, and we'll need to expand certain budgets in recruiting and maybe some other areas. But the great preponderance of that number is wrapped up in athletic scholarships. So I feel like there's a multi-pronged plan in place to help meet that goal or that need. And we've talked about increased corporate sponsorship, and we've done a great job. I think we've quadrupled in the last 18 months our corporate sponsorship from where we were 2 years ago. I think a big part of this would be philanthropy in terms of private giving. We've talked to donors over the years that we call them one issue voters that are really interested in supporting the college, but only if athletics were to reclassify to Division I. So we're going and having meetings and serious discussions with those constituents and saying, hey, if we do this, would you be willing to support our student athletes in a move? Because we need your help. We need to help meet that increased investment level that would be required at the Division I level.
That coming here from LeMoyne Athletics Director Bob Beretta in this special AD and DT live on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Bob, we're going to cover, as we have done for many months now, in this chronicled exclusive series that we've had, where we were first to the reclassification and realignment conversation, obviously sitting down with you and having that discussion. And we've done consistent updates over many months here, and also sat down with President Dr. Linda Lemura. We're going to continue breaking down this document and looking at different pieces of it, as we have done for many months now. And I appreciate the fact that LeMoyne and yourself, as well as Linda and everyone, has entrusted me with the opportunity to do this and to do things the right way. There's a lot of things in this document to break down that we will expand upon over the coming weeks. But as you said, and we've said many, many times, the final thing that is here, besides the actual conference maps itself and the ad hoc committee on athletics reclassification, it says next steps, and it's a very simple sentence. It says, in the coming weeks, the ad hoc committee will present President LeMoyne with its recommendations regarding a possible reclassification to Division I. Should an invitation from a Division I conference be extended at any point to the college at that time, the Board of Trustees will vote on whether to change our NCAA classification. Like you said, you may be weeks away, potentially months away, that there is a process here of the ad hoc committee making a decision, presenting that decision to Dr. Linda LeMoyne, who is a part of that committee, and then she has to go, as she said in my sit-down conversation with her that you can watch with anything in the series on the LeMoyne tab on WakeUpCallDT.com. She said, then once I make my decision, Dan, then I have to go to the Board of Trustees, and Board of Trustees from there will make the decision. So just to speak of the process of this, and I know that Linda said that in our conversation, she's like, obviously we haven't made a decision, but it seems like we're leaning at potentially going Division I. You and I have talked about that lean, but that this process is going to ultimately end with the Board of Trustees.
Without question, Dan, and that's a great point. And I think it's fair to say that the committee at this moment of time, at 9:30 on September 29th, the committee is leaning towards a recommendation to reclassify. But that lean could change based on feedback that we continue to receive. We haven't voted. When you meet over the course of several months and 26 meetings, you start to hear voices and opinions, and I can say, I think with a great degree of certainty that there's tremendous support on the committee to reclassify at this moment in time. And then the Board of Trustees could have a completely different lean on this. They might think 180 degrees differently. So it is very premature to state that a decision is made. I think because we've been so transparent that it allows media members or outside folks to take a look and say, oh, well, it's a done deal. We could have been very secretive in this process and not said anything until the Board of Trustees were to vote and say, hey, this is where it's at. But that's not who we are. You know, we are a very inclusive community, a very inclusive institution, and we're steered by our Jesuit values, and that's all about community and service. And that's who we are. And it doesn't mean that we can't explore and want more. And that's what we're doing right now. We're just, I think, taking great efforts to make sure that we do what's right for this institution long term. And as the president said in her words, it would be malpractice on her part if she didn't explore this as the president of this institution right now. But the process is a legitimate process, and you outlined it very eloquently and very accurately. That's kind of where we stand right now. But it's been impressive that we've taken advantage of the gift of time that we've had, because we could have just halted discussions in the summer and said this might not happen. And if it looks like it might, we can get together and meet a couple times in September. But it speaks to the leadership of this institution that said, we are going to use this time effectively and efficiently, and we are going to be dedicated to this process, and we're going to meet all summer long, and we're going to have an extended discernment, not just a decision, but a discernment. And you accurately portrayed that as well. A discernment is different than a decision. A discernment is a deep dive into how all areas could be affected. And is this truly the right move for this institution long term? It's not just a decision and a vote. A decision will come after this lengthy discernment period. So I've been really impressed with that discernment process. My first exposure to it here has been at LeMoyne. And there's been several discernments that I've been part of. And this has been so impressive to see our leadership and how important it is to our Board of Trustees that are on our committee, that are members of the committee, that we do exhaustively discuss and review every element, every point of feedback. We've had 16 members, I think, on that committee. It started with 12, and we added some other subject matter experts. And to listen to those voices and really discern what they're saying from every different angle. And maybe it wasn't supportive of a personal opinion, but it's been so refreshing that no one has let an agenda block any of what is the greater good, of what's in play for the greater good. So that's been really refreshing for me, and it's allowed me tremendous insight into who we are as an institution and why this special place on the Heights has been so successful, and why people are so passionate about it. This process has only strengthened that view in my eyes.
And before we close on this live conversation with LeMoyne College Athletics Director Bob Beretta, with a very special AD and DT on realignment and reclassification, clearing the air and letting you know the facts versus the misinformation that's out there about LeMoyne College. The Ignatian mission, you spoke about that. We have spoken at length, and you and I have spoken on and off the air about it. Dr. Linda Lemira and I have spoken on and off the air about the Ignatian mission and what it means to be a Jesuit institution, less than 30 around the country. What has that meant to you in this whole process, and how does this play into the process? Because you and I have spoken about it many times, that when there's a look at realignment and reclassification, everybody looks to sports. It's sports, 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 and they don't look at the student side of things, the academic side of things. You and I have talked about health and wellness, mental health. We've done a lot with that, and what's happening on the Heights at LeMoyne College, and the spirit. So to go into those elements of it, and that for LeMoyne, it's not just speak. It's not just a conversation of this not being a realistic thing, but that it goes far beyond the world of sports to have these conversations and to look at the spirit, to look at the Jesuit side of things, and to really make sure that the entire person is being included in a decision-making process like this, and not just spoken about as lip service, so to speak.
No, it's real, Dan. It is. And, it's so refreshing we have so many graduates on our board of trustees that are involved in this process. And it's important. It's important to every member that's tied to the institution that we do this right. They take it very seriously. And it's not just, hey, this is my opinion and this is what we should do. It's listening. It's being an active listener. The emphasis is placed on everyone having a voice, and our committee listening to those counter opinions sometimes, and trying to understand. We've had some committee members that have taken the role of devil's advocate and talked on the opposite side maybe of someone, to just try to invigorate that conversation and dive deep into the discussion. So it's been refreshing. It really has to go through this type of process. But I think what is so rewarding is everything that I heard about prior to arriving at LeMoyne has been proven and reinforced to me during this process, because we don't just put mantras on the wall and mottos on the wall. We live those every single day. We live our Jesuit values. We live excellence with integrity. We live greatness meets goodness every single day. And this process has been a great example of that. And we've been so transparent with 5 open fora and 2 for students and 2 for the parent. We're listening to everyone, and it's not a foregone conclusion. This wasn't a quid pro quo and a walk, just kind of a walk in eye candy, right? And eye wash, and let's have a committee, but the decision is made. It's been anything but that. And I think this process has been a true representation of what the Ignatian mission is all about. It's service, and how can we best position our institution for greatness moving forward. And we're all so much of what we base our everyday decision making on is excellence, and how we can be excellent. How can we provide an excellent experience for all of our stakeholders, our students, our student athletes, our faculty, our staff, all those things. And those are elements that we've talked about. That's why we've met 26 times. If we were just talking about this in a vacuum and how it would affect our athletic program, maybe we would have met a handful of times, 4 or 5 times. But because this has been such an extensive review of how every element is connected to our campus, that's why we've met 26 times. If you look at that document, it's highlighted all these different elements. And we had extensive dialogue on each one of those topics. And if you start thinking about that level of granular discussion on that many topics, you can see why we met 26 times. It has not been taken lightly. And I think it's a true representation of what a discernment truly is. And also about what our Ignatian values, our Jesuit values of including as many people in the process, listening to as many voices, men and women with and for others, all those things that I could list here, but they've been symbolic of this process.
And a note here, looking at all of this, the visibility of the institution in the document right before it says next steps, something that we've spoken about as well as you've gone through this discernment process, looking at something that you and I have talked about months ago, which was, where you are in the NE10 right now and being a New England-based conference, where are these, kind of regional opponents? And when you look at the NEC and you say, okay, you have Sacred Heart, Long Island University, Wagner, Fairleigh Dickinson, Stonehill, and Merrimack, who you had Stonehill and Merrimack inside of the NE10. Previously, Merrimack making the move a few years ago, Stonehill just making the move to Division I, reclassifying from the NE10 to the NEC. And when you look at the MAC, Marist, Siena, Canisius, Niagara, Iona, Manhattan, looking at teams like that you would be playing in a very close area. And you talk about cost and financially what it would ask you to do. Some of these bus trips are going to be shortened now. Some of the costs that you have currently would go down with having more of these schools closer by. Also including the fact that you have the Colgates, Cornells, St. Bonaventure, Binghamtons, Albany's, Buffalo, Army, West Point, Syracuse, that are right there for non-conference play. And then we look at the Jesuit institutions, Holy Cross, Xavier, Gonzaga, Georgetown, Creighton, St. Peter's, Fordham, Fairfield, Boston College, Marquette, St. Louis, Loyola Maryland, Loyola Chicago. All of these pieces, when you talk about what looks enticing, you have all these Jesuit institutions that you could play non-conference. You have all of these New York schools you could play non-conference, some of them right down the road or an hour or two away. On top of all of that, if it be the MAC or the NEC per se, you have within it these shorter trips. So as we talk about increasing money and different things you're going to have to raise, you're also decreasing some costs of travel and building immediate rivalries that could generate money itself. So you're spending money, but in this decision to potentially reclassify and realign, you're going to be saving money and going down new roads and new avenues to bring in revenue that you didn't have before.
That's a great point, Dan. And we've talked about the wear and tear of our student athletes. Right now, the geographic footprint doesn't favor LeMoyne in the NE10. That's just the fact. We're an outlier geographically. And outside of a trip to St. Rose, most of our travel trips are 5+ hours away. And that puts a lot of academic strain on our student athletes. I think right now we have 11 trips that are 4 hours or more currently. And I think that number would shrink considerably if it was the MAC or the NEC. That non-conference inventory, I talk about it often. And I think that is so important to this discussion that right now we have to travel a far distance to play the majority of our non-conference games because there's not a great number, not a great volume of Division II inventory in our region. If we were to reclassify to Division I, we would now be able to play schools like SU and Colgate and Cornell and Bonaventure and Army and all those that you just listed on a regular basis and form geographic rivalries that right now we can't enjoy. I think the opportunity to showcase our institution in a different geographic region that we find very appealing, extremely desirable, whether that's the New York metropolitan area. LeMoyne has long held a footprint down there. I think that it has shrunk a little bit here in recent years. We find that really appealing. That's exciting to think about being able to showcase our institution down in that region where we have so many of our alums and so many prospective students, not just student athletes, but students. And that is extremely desirable for the institution as well. So it's all part of this growth strategy. It's not siloed in athletics. Everything that we've talked about affects every element of campus, and we haven't taken it lightly. But there are some savings in this as well, from a travel, from a cost, from the wear and tear of our student athletes, and certainly the everyday experience of our student athletes being able to go on a daily basis and play in venues like SU or Colgate or Cornell. I think it's a very different experience than right now, that they see on a daily basis right now.
That coming from LeMoyne College Athletics Director Bob Beretta and myself, Dan Tortora, inside of this edition of AD and DT, setting the record straight on LeMoyne College's realignment reclassification conversation, where they're at currently in the process, the fact that this process needs to be respected. The whole time we've been talking, I've just been thinking of 3 words that you hear all the time: respect the process. So, this process has come with many people, many open forums, many opportunities for people all over the community to speak their mind and for people to be listened to. And so I want to thank you again, and Dr. Linda Lemura, the provost, everyone involved in the Board of Trustees, as well as the ad hoc committee, for all of the time and energy that you have spent to make sure that this process, whatever is decided, is a process of much discernment and making sure that as many people are heard as can be heard, and that you do have those devil's advocates to show you the other side of what things could look like. I mean, I can say this: I have never been a part of a process of any stretch of the imagination like this, and to see the work that you've put in as a college, as an institution, through many, many months, it is beyond a reputable thing to go back and look at, and just respecting all throughout this process what you have done, how you have done it, and the strain that it's taken, because everybody has jobs, everybody has things you're doing, you have a lot of things on your plate. So to add this to that, and to make sure that everybody is given time, like you said, Dr. Lemura, jumping on her phone if she's out of town to get to a meeting, it really says a lot about LeMoyne College, things I already knew, but now hopefully people around the world from this conversation know that, and hopefully they understand that this record is now the current record, the record straight, and we will move forward here with LeMoyne College. And you can be sure, as from the beginning, that if and when anything happens, I will be on the screen with Bob, more than likely sitting in a room somewhere, and Dr. Linda Lemura always involved as well. So, Bob, I want to thank you. I want to thank Linda. I want to thank, like I said, everyone at LeMoyne for this process and for involving me in the process. And I want to thank you this morning for giving me the opportunity to bring you onto the air so that we can clear the air and set the record straight and make sure that LeMoyne's story is not tarnished, not tainted, not misrepresented, because that would be an egregious party foul. As we know in life, there are a lot of things in social media that are not true, and LeMoyne College, for all the work you put in, you deserve to have that work respected and well represented. So I appreciate you letting me do that today.
Well, Dan, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for the platform and the opportunity to discuss this and being so invested in this process. But thank you for the morals and ethics you display every day in your work. And you are a professional, and to give us the opportunity to talk facts and the fact that you report facts. And we're very, very grateful for our relationship, and thank you for this opportunity. It means an awful lot to this institution. I talk about our Jesuit values. We want to partner with people that are like us, and we want to partner with people like you. So thank you. Before I leave, I do just want to pass along our thoughts and prayers to all those in Hurricane Ian's path. I know you have many followers, and we have many folks from central New York that have relocated down into the Florida space, and our thoughts and prayers are with you all.
Yeah, thank you for that too. And we will be featuring another dad to me, Papa Joe, who will be joining the show momentarily. So we do send our prayers and our well wishes to everybody in the path of Hurricane Ian. And I ask God, as always, to take that beautiful, wonderful, giant hand of his and move that back into the ocean and away from everybody. Bob, as always, thank you. for everything that you've done, and it shows your character, your morals, and your values that we end with a prayer down to everybody that needs it. So thank you for that, as always, and thank you for your professionalism and your time. And I have to say this because we can't end a conversation without it. Fins up.
Fins up, Dan. Thanks again for the opportunity. Have a great day, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds perfect. Take care.